This is the most forbidden film that ever made and got banned in 51 states and countries. I'm talking about the kind of film that crossed the line with intense violence, taboo topics, and everything in between. Hey everyone, Harris here from Bestest channel. Today we are diving into something pretty wild movies that were so controversial they actually got banned in different countries. Yep, we are counting down the top 10 films that stirred things up so much that government decided, nope, not here. Some of the reasons for these bans are pretty wild and some are downright strange. So let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Alright, kicking off at number 10, we've got Apocalypse Now, 1979. This movie is intense, like really intense. It's one of those war films that doesn't hold back on showing the brutal realities of conflict. Now in South Korea, this was a big problem. The government was worried about how the US military was portrayed in the film. They thought it might spark some anti-American sentiment, especially because relations were a bit shaky back then. So they just banned it, even though it's now considered one of the best war films ever made. Back then, it was just too real for South Korea. Moving on to number 9, we've got Blue is the Warmest Color, 2013. Now, this is a beautiful French film that tells a very raw, emotional story about love and self-discovery between two women. But here's the thing, some countries just couldn't handle it. Places like Tunisia and Singapore banned it because of its explicit depiction of a lesbian relationship. They argued that it was too much, even calling it pornographic. But despite the bans, this movie has been celebrated worldwide for its honest and intense portrayal of young love. It's one of those films that is as much about the controversy as it is about the story. Moving on to number 8, we have 2012. Now, this one's a bit different from the others on our list. It's a disaster movie about the end of the world, which, let's be honest, had everyone kind of freaking out back in 2009. But the reason it was banned in North Korea has nothing to do with the world-ending stuff. Nope, it was all about the year itself. You see, 2012 was a very special year for North Korea because it marked the 100th birthday of Kim Il-sung, the country's founder. The government didn't want anything negative associated with that year. And a movie about the world being destroyed? Yeah, that didn't really fit with their plans for national celebrations. So, they just banned it. It's one of those situations where the reason for the ban is so specific to that country that it almost feels surreal. But then again, this is North Korea we're talking about. Nothing they do is exactly straightforward. And at number 7, we've got the Da Vinci Code 2006. If you remember when this movie came out, you'll know it was a massive hit and a massive controversy. Based on Dan Brown's best-selling novel, the movie delves into some pretty heavy stuff, like questioning the history of Jesus Christ and the Catholic Church. For some countries, this was a big no-no. Places like India, Egypt, and a few others decided to ban the movie outright because they saw it as a blasphemous. They were worried it would offend religious communities and cause unrest. In some places, they only allowed the movie to be shown after significant cuts were made to tone down the more controversial scenes. But here's the thing, the controversy probably only made the movie more popular. Everyone wanted to see what all the fuss was about. It's a classic case of a movie being just as famous for the drama it caused as for the story it tells. Now, coming in at number 6 is The Interview 2014. Man, if you were around when this movie came out, you'll probably remember the drama. It's a comedy about a pilot to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And surprise, surprise, it was banned in North Korea. But it didn't stop there. North Korea actually threatened the United States with retaliation if the movie was released. The whole situation was a mess. This led to that huge cyber attack on Sony Pictures, which a bunch of confidential emails and data got leaked. In the end, the movie got pulled from major theaters, but it was still released online and in a few smaller places. It's one of those moments that showed just how powerful and scary censorship can get when it crosses over into international politics. At number 5, we have Last Tango in Paris, 1972. This film is known for being groundbreaking and, well, pretty explicit. Directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, it didn't shy away from intense sexual content, and that led to it being banned in several countries including Italy and South Korea. Italy went so far as to convict Bertolucci of obscenity, and they even tried to destroy all copies of the film. Can you imagine a country trying to erase a movie from existence? Despite all that, Last Tango in Paris is now considered a classic, though it's still one of those movies that sparks deep debate about where the line between art and obscenity should be drawn. Moving on to number 4, we've got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. If you're a horror fan, you know this movie is legendary. But when it first came out, it was just too much for a lot of people. The violence and disturbing content were so extreme that it got banned in the UK, Germany, Italy, and several other countries. Authorities were worried that the movie would have a bad influence, especially on young viewers. Over time, though, the bans were lifted and it's now considered a must-see for horror fans. But back in the 70s, this was the kind of movie that really pushed the limits of what people could handle. It is one of those films that actually swayed some people to cannibalism. Uncanny. We are in the top 3 now, and at number 3 is Monty Python's Life of Brian 1979. This one's a comedy, but it's also a pretty sharp satire about religion and the story of Jesus. And as you might expect, that didn't sit well with a lot of people. It was banned in Norway, Ireland, and even some parts of the United States, because folks thought it was a blasphemous. The Monty Python crew said it was just a comedy movie about how people tend to follow leaders blindly. That I'm totally on board with them on this, but that didn't stop the outrage. Interestingly, the ban in Norway was used as a marketing technique in Sweden, where they advertised it as the film is so funny that it was banned in Norway. Even with all the bans, Life of Brian became a cult classic, and after all this time, it is still hilarious today. Number 2, The Exorcist 1973. Now, if you have ever seen this movie, you know it is seriously freaky. Even today, it is still considered one of the scariest movies ever made. But back in the 70s, it was so intense that some countries just couldn't handle it. I'm talking about the UK, Singapore, China, they all banned the movie. The whole thing about demonic possessions combined with those super creepy visuals was just too much for a lot of people. There were actually stories of people fainting, puking, and even having heart attacks while watching it. Some theaters even had ambulances on standby. How wild is that? Religious groups were also up in arms, calling the movie blasphemous and saying it was basically promoting evil. But over time, the bans were lifted again, and now The Exorcist is like a badge of honor for horror fans. It is funny to think that something so legendary was once seen as too dangerous to watch. And finally, we've made it to number 1. Clockwork Orange. This movie, directed by the genius Stanley Kubrick, is infamous for being super violent and totally disturbing, 100%. It's got this dark, twisted story that makes you think about some real heavy stuff, like violence and free will. But it's the really unsettling scenes that got it in trouble. The movie caused such a stir that Kubrick himself asked for it to be pulled from theaters in the UK after people started blaming it for inspiring real-life violence. It stayed banned there for almost 30 years. It wasn't until after Kubrick passed away that it finally got released again. Even now, A Clockwork Orange isn't exactly easy to watch. It's not the kind of movie you throw on for a casual movie night, but it's definitely a masterpiece, and it shows just how powerful and provocative movies can be. And here we are, that's our countdown of the top 10 movies that were banned for being too controversial, too intense, or just too ahead of their time. These films didn't just push boundaries, they blew them up and forced us to think about where we draw the line between art and offense. So, what do you think? Were these bans justified or were they just an overreaction? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of movies. Thank you for watching, and to the next best ends everyone. Have a nice life.